Hello and welcome to Interlagos for highlights from the 9th and final round of the 2023 VCO Formula SimRacing World Championship. I'm Edward Hunter and here's all of the driver changes going into the finale. Royal Blue Racing have promoted pro driver Stoyan Barbakov in place of the absent Cosmo Pashito to help them overcome the 2-point gap to Arnaud Brabham for 7th in the team's championship. Race Clutch have hired Superlights champion Owen McGorgy for their second seat as they hope to hold off Burst Simplexity, who have hired Tom Oldenmenger to fill in for Damien Skovron. Finally, Academy champion Thomas Smith subs in for Jukka Pekkalailu at Super Venturi, whilst returning FSR president Cameron Roger has a cameo drive at Visceral eSports. Colin Spork took his second pole position of the season by a 10th over Janos Braksok, but it was newly crowned quadruple champion Jerne Simoncic who got the better getaway, going around the outside of the Arnaud Brabham into the centre S for second. In the chaos behind, Petr Briliak tried unsuccessfully to go around the outside of Adam Maguire for 4th as Fletcher found Yannick Bock's black and green TX3 going around the outside of him for 8th. It was then almost 4 wide as Jake Dennehan tried to pass both Sander Callas and Martin Mergeli in one fell swoop. The RHG proved a tougher nut to crack, and the Irishman had to complete the move around the outside at Bico di Pato to climb into the top 10 from 14th on the grid. Dennis Jordan tried to move around the outside of Callas for 13th, as Barbakov moved aside for his teammate Matthew Williams, only to find Roger and the Visceral slipping up the inside as well, as Costas Van Vukas lost control and fell to the back of the pack. Callas held the inside on Jordan into Desida de Lago, as Hakimi followed Roger around the outside of Barbakov. Oldenmenger was fighting Panzar for 23rd on lap 3 and made a bid for the inside at Bico di Pato. The Dutchman then went side by side with the Race Clutch through Mergulio before prevailing around the outside into Jun Chao. By lap 8, Oldenmenger had passed Smith, who spun his Super Venturi around on the exit of Larangina. The following lap, Michi Hoyer did battle with his usual teammate Roger over 17th place, taking the inside at the centre S before a mistake for Sander Callas at Curva de Sol gifted him another position. There was disaster just behind for Arnaud Brabham as Hakimi dipped a wheel on the grass and crashed out, dealing a major setback to the team's hopes. Jordan was becoming fed up at the back of Zux' car, and on lap 10 he dispatched a ground effect by going around the outside of the Hungarian at turn 1. On lap 13, Jordan again used DRS to get past Mergeli for 12th. As Roger came in for his first stop on lap 17, Spork had already come in from the lead, emerging 14th behind McGorgy. A lap later, Briliak pit from 5th in the sister Alpine, followed closely by Dennehan and Jordan, just a few seconds apart. Then Braksok, David Mrokcek and Siebel pit on lap 19, with the Arnaud Brabham being undercut by Briliak. Simoncic and Bock pit on lap 20 as Jordan easily overcame Stavros Musadis through Jun Chao on fresh tyres. Bock re-emerged behind Siebel, with both having been leapfrogged by Dennehan's NX27. Adam Maguire was the last of the leaders to pit on lap 21, meaning Spork could retake the lead in an Alpine 1-2. As Braksok overtook the yet-to-stop Callas, Maguire resurfaced just behind Mrokcek in 7th. Matthew Williams was right behind Fletcher on lap 22, cutting underneath the Visceral at Desida de Lago to snatch 15th position. Panzar had stayed out and was starting to impede Dennehan before he pit going into lap 23. This allowed Siebel to close in around the back of the Irishman as both cars had DRS, enabling Dennehan to defend 8th place. Callas had fallen into the clutches of Maguire by lap 24 and the RHG made a comfortable DRS pass for 6th down the main straight. Meanwhile, Musadis continued to struggle as Fletcher and then Mergeli relieved him of 14th through turn 14. The second RHG got a double slipstream, forcing the Spaniard to get defensive into turn 1 to keep his Visceral machine ahead. Dennehan went around the outside of Callas for 7th on lap 26 and was immediately followed by Siebel down the Reta Aposta. A bad exit allowed Bock through at turn 5 before Jordan then launched himself up the inside of the Estonian at turn 8, making it 4 places lost in 1 lap for the ground effect. Callas then pit and was followed in by the valet of Musadis on the same strategy. This allowed McGorgy to challenge Roger for 16th, positioning himself to the outside. Roger's DRS looked to have saved him, but he went too deep into the centre S, allowing the race clutch to go side by side with the Scotsman through Curva de Sol, with only just enough room being given. The Visceral then went wide into Descida de Largo, allowing a grateful Zux to nip up the inside of him. But this wasn't to last, as Zux dropped back behind Roger and was then at the mercy of Barbakov on the medium tyres on lap 30. Braxok had done well to undercut Simoncic, but the burst driver would only be held up for so long, passing for third at the inside at turn 1 on lap 34, just as Maguire was challenging Rokcek for 5th behind them. He would take 5th on the following lap, but not before making contact with the pole through Curva de Sol. By lap 37, Simoncic had caught Brylyak and was able to slot up the inside into turn 1 very early on to climb into second place. Barbakov then pit from 12th for another set of medium tyres, emerging outside the points. Almost a lap ahead of him, Sport came in for his second stop from the lead at the start of lap 38. Jordan pitted on the same lap as Sport, who emerged 9th ahead of Williams. Barbakov then got alongside Van Vukas on his fresh tyres, and the Bulgarian scythed ahead for 23rd position into turn 1. Then it was Brylyak, Braxok and Denahan who visited the pits, with the Croatian leaving the same box right as the NX27 was arriving into it. Tom Aldermenger then defended aggressively from Magorgi into Descida de Largo. Maguire, Siebel, Bock and Williams pit on lap 40, followed a lap later by Rokcek. Martin Merguli though saw his race end with a spin and a crash into the pit wall. Williams was spun by Hoyer on lap 42, with the British driver less than impressed as he repassed the German. Roger found himself in the battle with the long-running Musadis for 18th, profiting when the Valley lost traction on the outside of the centre S. A mistake from Brylyak into Curva de Sol on lap 46 allowed Simoncic to once more snatch second from him down the Reta Oposta, as Maguire and Rokcek also jumped Braxok. Hoyer had pit for hards and easily dispatched Musadis into Junchao on lap 54. As Maguire made his final pit stop from 4th, Ferrari decided to swap their cars around on lap 57, with Siebel now back ahead of Jordan. Both Jordan and Denahan pit the following lap, following in Brylyak. The Alpine driver had been undercut by Maguire, but worse was to follow as he then retired with technical problems. Spork would make his final stop for mediums at the end of lap 58, and he was followed shortly by Rokcek, Braxok and Bock, as Zux lost his front wing and experienced a 16-minute pit stop. Maguire had undercut Rokcek to get himself back onto the podium. Simoncic made his final stop the next lap, relinquishing the lead back to Sport before resurfacing behind Maguire. However, there was heartbreak for the Irishman as he had sped in the pit lane, meaning he had to serve a drive-through penalty. Braxok had been leapfrogged by Denahan and Jordan, who continued to dispute 4th position. Meanwhile, Burstow had the podium to themselves, with Simoncic allowing Rokcek past him for 2nd. Denahan then had to get very defensive at turn 1 to hold Jordan at bay. Hoyer had cleared the 2-stop in Calais on lap 67, but Spork was about to take his 3rd win of the season by 17 seconds in a masterclass from the outgoing 2022 champion. Rokcek got his best result of the season in 2nd ahead of new champion Simoncic. Denahan triumphed over Jordan to secure the runners-up spot. Siebel pipped Braxok, Bock and Williams to 6th, whilst Maguire in 10th was left to rue a lost podium. Hoyer would finish 11th on the road, but a 2-place penalty for spinning around Williams dropped him to 13th. Instead, Fletcher and Aldermenger would be 11th and 12th. Magorgi was 14th on a solid debut, beating Kalas, Barbakov and returning president Roger. Pansar was 18th despite retiring on the final lap, with Musadis and Van Vukas rounding out the point scorers. Smit would miss out in 21st, but the season ended with disappointment for Brylyak, Zux, Mugili, Valeriano and Hakimi, none of whom saw the checkered flag. Simoncic's 4th title is secured by 41 points from new GPV Super League champion Denahan. Jordan was 3rd for the 2nd year in a row, just 6 points in arrears. Rokcek's 2nd place means he holds on to 4th by a single point from Spork, who ends an up and down title defence. Siebel also triumphed over Brylyak as Bock ended his first season in the top 8. Braxok's 7th, meanwhile, was enough for him to overcome Williams by a point. Maguire and Hoyer were just outside the top 10 as Liam Deval ends the season equal on points with Jan Grankvist and Callas. Tom Lartigue was 16th ahead of fellow debutants Mark Schluter and Maguli, as well as Panzar and Zux. Hakimi was equal with Valeriano in 21st as Fletcher's 2 cameo appearances netted him 23rd ahead of Lalu, Prosciutto, Musadis, Van Vukas and Skovron. Oldenburger sneaked into 29th, and the top 30 was rounded out by Danny van der Neet. Burst eSports were teams champions for the third time by 78 points, deposing previous champions Red Bull and their new Ferrari guys. Bad luck for Alpine meant there were 21 points adrift in third, with NX27 in a creditable fourth, ahead of the French RHE and TX3 squads. Royal Blue had a strong recovery in the second half of the season, beating Arnaud Brabant by a single point. The battle for 9th ended in a dead heat, with Burst Simplexity ranked ahead of Race Clutch due to Hoyer's 6th places in Canada and San Marino. A tough season for Ground Effect though, sees them fall from 5th to 11th, with Super Venturi also struggling to back up their strong start to the season. It was a solid debut year for Visceral Esports though, with the Canadian squad triumphing over Italian outfits Valet and Netrex. So with all 9 rounds completed, the curtain falls on the 2023 season, with Jerne Simoncic becoming the second most successful FSR driver of all time. But Colin Spork ended the season with an imperious drive, stating his intent to regain the title in 2024. We'll be back in the off-season for our winter series, but from me, Edward Hunter, and everyone here at the VCO FSR World Championship, we thank you very much for watching another fantastic season. From the southern suburbs of Sao Paulo, it's goodbye for now.